What's going on, guys? I'm Frank with City Diesel Offroad, and welcome to our YouTube channel. For those of you that don't know, we are a diesel and off-road shop based out of Las Vegas, Nevada. We specialize in Cummins, Powerstroke, and Duramax diesel pickups, as well as Jeeps, Toyotas, Lexus, whatever you want lifted. If you want to put some 1 tons under, if you want to put an LS in something, a Hemi, whatever it is. If it's got 4 wheels and an engine, we're pretty much into it. Check us out. Right now we're on Facebook and Instagram at City Diesel Offroad. I'll put a link in the description and check us out. We also have our website, www.cincitydieselandoffroad.com. Kind of go over, check out what we do, and if you like what you see, give us a call. See if we can get something going for your vehicle. So behind me here, we got our newest project. We figured new year, new channel, new project. Might as well just do it all right now. So it's a 2006 Dodge Ram 2500. It's got the 5.9 Cummins, 48 RE automatic, 4-wheel drive, bone stock. Little disclaimer, we've already done a couple things to it. I can't leave anything alone for too long, but just little things that we won't really cover anyway. We did the tint. Gotta have tint. We're here in Vegas. It's very hot. It's a little cold right now. Obviously, I'm wearing my sweater, but it's hot, so I gotta have tint. And the stereo's done. Outside of that, she's pretty much bone stock. I mean, looks like your grandpa just dropped it off and you inherited it, maybe. You know, still got the foggy headlights and everything. But we're gonna address everything. We're gonna go through this entire truck. It's gonna be an awesome build. I hope you guys stick around. Kind of the idea with this truck is we're going for full street performance. The highest horsepower we've hit on a build that we've done so far is about 700 horse or so. We haven't been able to break that 4-digit HP mark, which is something I've really wanted to do. Don't know why, just I've got to do it. So we're gonna do it with this bad boy. We chose this truck because 06, there's no emissions besides the catalytic converter, which not a big deal to hang on to. You know, the 4th gen trucks are my favorite. I love them, but EPA cracking down. You can't be deleting them, and it's kind of hard to push much power right now, at least for us. I mean, we don't have we're not gonna go through and R&D a whole bunch of things to try to make power with DPF and all that. I'd rather just kind of slap that easy button, start with the old classic 06. So we'll dig into it. This video here is going to be kind of a low speed video, just basically what I like to do when I first get a new truck. So stick around. I know it's kind of a low speed video, but stick around. At the end of the video, I'll kind of show you what I like to do to introduce my vehicles. Alright, so we got her in the shop. We're going to go over a few things that I like to do when I buy a vehicle. These are just some things that I've picked up over the years, buying and selling. Just little things that kind of will bite you in the rear if you don't do them. Because as we all know, things fail when you least need them to fail. You're on the road with your family, you got the toy hauler on, whatever it may be, that's when things break. So we're trying to minimize as much of that as possible. So we're going to go over a few things that I look for, and again, these are things that after you've purchased the vehicle. I'm not going to go over what you do looking at a vehicle because there's kind of a whole different can of worms. If that's something you guys want me to do, I can in a later video, but right now we're going to do, you bought the vehicle, what should you do, things to look for, quick little things to make sure you have a reliable vehicle, kind of give you a status report of the vehicle, and have the best possible luck when it's time to go long distance, or even just so you don't have to worry about it breaking down on the way to work. So let's get into it. First things first, I like to get the vehicle in. Obviously I have my shop, so it's nice, I have the lift, everything, but you don't need that. Basically, you're going through, first thing is change your oil. That's simple, because no matter what the seller told you, hey, I just changed the oil, you don't know if they're using Walmart oil, you don't know if they had Jiffy Lube do it, you don't know if they didn't do it. So just go ahead and reset the clock on all your maintenance, do your oil change. Biggest thing, use a good filter. We use Mopar OEM here. You can use, I know people use Baldwin, I guess Wix, some other brands, but a lot of things is not much better than OEM. That's what we go with. That's what will be going on this. As far as conventional synthetic oils, kind of up to you on that one. I'm just gonna run Dello 1540 conventional oil, nothing fancy on this one, because I will be doing a lot of oil changes because she's gonna get beat on quite a bit, and as you're beating on them, you got to do your maintenance, shorten it up if you want it to live. That's kind of been my philosophy, and it's kind of worked. So first off, get in here and check the air filter. So biggest thing I've found neglected on trucks that come through the shop is actually air filter. This one's not too bad. I'm gonna just leave it in here. It's got something on here, no big deal. It's actually not too bad. Then always reset your filter minder. That way it's actually there to show you if the filter is good or not. Next up, obviously coolant. So got a little pressure there. Lo and behold, I got no coolant. We got a little rust. So that's something we're gonna address. We're gonna look at it. Probably running water in here. Probably has a coolant leak somewhere that got missed when I bought it. It is what it is. I'm not too worried because again, this motor's not gonna stay. Even if it does stay for a little while, we're probably gonna go through and do a bunch of work to it anyway. Sometimes the vehicle's warm when you go in to buy it. The person drove it to wherever you're at, so you're not able to check this without, burning yourself. So this was something you want to look at because, as you can tell, we just found kind of a concern that we're gonna have to address here. Moving on from that, definitely want to check out your belt. Again, something like this one looks like it hasn't been replaced, so I'm just gonna replace it just to do it. I don't want this thing snapping, especially when we start turning higher RPMs, which this will do. Spending a little money now goes a long way in the future. That's been my rule, my philosophy there. After that, check your batteries. These are fairly new. They got 620 on them. So most likely they're gonna be good. I'm not gonna test them. If they're a little older, if you have a tester, I would test them yourself or take them to like an O'Reilly's or something like that. They'll be able to test them. Again, when you're buying a vehicle in the warmer weather, you usually don't have a battery issue. It's that first cold night you come out, go to click on the truck, she doesn't want to start, batteries are done. So kind of save yourself the hassle. Check that out beforehand. You want to check for corrosion, make sure all these wires, you can see this is all loose, this is loose. I already knew the battery terminals were loose. So we're going to address that. We're going to clean up the battery terminals. We're going to clean up all this wiring. You can see there's some corrosion there. So we're going to go ahead and clean all that up, get this disconnected, and we'll go from there. All right, so we got the batteries cleaned up. Like I said, just little things to keep from having failures down the road. I got this one. I replaced the bolt here. Again, if I was keeping this battery, I'd be replacing this whole terminal. That'd be the right way to fix it, but in a couple weeks, this whole system would be ditched. One thing I'll say is kind of while you're working on things, even in general, you kind of want to keep an eye around where you're working at. So while I was cleaning this battery, I noticed this ground was loose. So something like that it'll give you weird things. Like I said, just like having the battery terminals loose, you can have issues with random codes, phantom codes, crank no start, dead batteries, battery drain, weird things like that. So I'm gonna get that cleaned up, and then we're gonna move on to underneath. All right, so we're under the truck now. We're gonna go over basically underneath the truck, suspension, the fluids, leaks, what to kind of look out for, things like that. We do have a lift. It makes it a lot easier, but this is something you can do in your driveway. Put it on jacks, put jack stands underneath. Don't use the Harbor Freight ones apparently, but you can do this without a lift. We just have a lift and I don't have to roll around underneath. So basically the main thing is your steering linkage, your gearbox, sway bar, As you can see, it's kind of rusty under here. It does have depth wobble. I didn't do this check. I've driven this truck before this check, and around 80 mile an hour on the freeway, changing lanes, I got a little bit of shaking on there. So that's why you do these checks, to prevent that from happening again at the worst time. Luckily, I was just by myself. Got it under control, stomped on the brakes, came under control, not a big deal, but you know, that can cause an accident, things like that. So we'll move on from there. First thing you want to do is just get a hand on everything, kind of shake. Most of this is actually pretty tight, it's not too bad. Anything that you can kind of get a pry bar in, kind of wiggle, check for play. Again, the tie rod drag link assembly on this is not too bad. Check the track bar. Track bar is a big issue on a lot of straight front axle Jeeps, trucks, vehicles, anything, but anything with a track bar. So I always want to look out for that. Ford Super Duties, they have a ball joint on this side, and often overlooked. We've replaced quite a few of them, so things to look out for. Get your pry bar. You're not going to hurt nothing. If you do hurt something, it's better that it breaks now. Check the ball joints. That's the biggest thing too on straight front axle trucks. This is how I check them. I got these big Mac Daddy pliers. Get them under here, underneath the bottom of the ball joint, and on top of the axle right there, and just squeeze. As you can see, we got quite a bit of movement. So again, we're going to be replacing these ball joints, so it's not too big of a deal for us, but definitely something to look out for. The other side's probably the same, not even going to check. Other thing you can do, get under here, wiggle. As you can see, we got some play here as well. Wheel bearings are pretty much shot. Wiggling side to side will show you if you got any play in pitman arm, drag link, any of your steering linkage. So kind of do a side to side wiggle. Top to bottom will kind of tell you a wheel bearing or ball joints as well. So we already know this front end needs attention. Another thing you can kind of do, got to be careful of, especially if you got a seal here, kind of get a pry bar in here, check your sector shaft play. These gearboxes are known for having some play there. This one doesn't. We're still probably going to replace it just because it's rusty and I don't like the way it looks. While you're underneath, we're going to go ahead and check out, I got the light here, we're going to check for leaks. Again, this is preventative things. It doesn't drop anything on the driveway, but leading back to that coolant loss that I was talking about, you can kind of see I got some coolant built up here. You can kind of see how it's running up, so this is a good opportunity to get underneath, look for maybe where it's coming from. The way it's looking right now, probably water pump. So I'll look more into that. Moving on, underneath, again, just kind of looking around. You want to inspect mainly your critical systems, your brake lines, especially the soft lines. They like to rub, they rub through. We have to take a quick break. The compressor came on, so I shut that off so we can continue. So underneath, while we're here looking at your soft brake lines, these like to rot out. You guys up north with a lot of rust, check your hard lines. This truck, it does have some rust. It looks like it spent a couple of years in a rust belt, but other than that, it's not too bad. So check your brake pads, your brake rotors in here. You're just checking to make sure you don't have any ripples. Don't do it with the glove on, but again, most of this stuff on this truck we're going to be replacing, but for you guys, you want to just get your finger in there, see if you have any ridges. It should be flat. This one, some bigger wheels, you can actually see your brake pads. This one, you'd actually have to take the wheels off and inspect your brake pads that way. Again, get your pry bar in here, check your control arms. These are getting replaced, so we're not going to do that. Big issue on Dodges, especially the older ones as they're getting older. This front axle, this front drive shaft, I'm sorry. This double cardon joint likes to fail. It fails, you keep riding, you'll feel a vibration, you keep driving, you end up, you either damage your differential, or actually a common one is you'll blow up your T-case, and what that does, it applies a whole bunch of pressure to the tail housing of your transmission, and it cracks the tail housing. Keep going like that, you end up losing the fluid out of the transmission, Now you've roasted your transmission, drive shaft, and your T-case. You're looking at a couple $1,000. Sometimes the drive shaft will fail, you'll be driving, and it'll end up wiping out the entire, anything over here, which you got some harnesses, some things that'll actually fail, cause your more electrical gremlins. And electrical is one of those things you don't want to have, you don't want to deal with if you don't have to, so save yourself the trouble there. Transmission mounts, you kind of want to make sure they're nice and you can get in there a little. Light on her. So we'll get the power bar. You can kind of see these mounts are probably pretty good. On the Dodges, I see that they tear at the bottom a lot, and you'll have, it just ends up with a bad ride. When you're lifted, it ends up kind of jolting around. So check out, you guys with emissions on, like the DPF trucks, you want to check that you don't have any leaks in your DPF or your exhaust system, period. That'll cause you to throw codes, go into a bunch of regens. You know, keep an eye out for that. So this truck only has a cat. That's mainly one of the big reasons we got this truck, is that the only emissions equipment on it is this cat. So not a big deal to retain that. As you can see, we got a big old disconnect here on our muffler. Again, that's something we're going to be replacing and taking care of there. So not a big deal to us, but definitely something you'd want to address. Definitely want to check out your drive line. Make sure your U-joints don't have any play. This side-to-side movement, that's normal, don't worry about that. But you don't want any up and down movement in your bolt or in your U-joints themselves. I forgot to mention up front too, but you want to check your shocks. Again, making sure they're tight, seeing if there's any leakage. Again, this is something we're replacing, so I'm not too worried about it. Check for your pinion seal leak. They're all going to kind of seep, especially these old trucks. Not too worried about that. We'll check the fluid level as we move forward, but again, we're not too worried. All right, so moving on back here. Again, just checking out your brake lines, your soft lines, your hard lines. These are critical systems. You lose brakes, you're in a world of hurt. So with the differentials, I like to replace the fluid when I buy a vehicle. It takes 20 minutes, like 30 bucks in fluid. Reseal your diff. You get to check out the condition of your gears. If you got any issues, you can address them now before you're hauling with the family. You got the toy hauler back there. That's when things like to go boom. And those tow bills alone are a couple $100, especially when you got a trailer. So check that out. Another thing you want to check out, especially on these heavier 1-ton trucks, check out your leaf springs. You want to make sure there's no cracks. Some of these leaves like to crack, especially on older trucks. The older they get, the more they're used, especially if they were beat on at all. Kind of see, check these pads. These just end up making noise if you don't have them. The leaves start to rub together. You want to check your bushings on the leaf springs themselves, things like that. You can tell that these had like helper springs, somebody cut them all up. It's not a big deal. We're going to run it like that. Another thing I forgot to touch on was, biggest thing is, again, this is something you probably do when you're buying the vehicle, but we'll check it out now, is the condition of your tires. I mean, that's what puts all the power to the ground. That's what puts, you know, that's between you and the pavement. So you want to check for dry rotting. These tires, not too bad. They're a little old, a little bit of dry rot, but you can tell they're kind of chewed up, probably seen some dirt roads and whatnot. You know, would I put a big old toy hauler behind this? Maybe not. Probably get away with it though. So it's kind of on your spectrum of how rowdy you like to get, but I'd replace these, and we will be replacing these. So another thing, major thing to look for. Another thing, I've kind of seen it a lot. Pop these covers off if you have them. If you don't, just make sure all your lug nuts are there. Might even be a good thing to actually torque your lug nuts. A lot of guys, a lot of shops, whatever, they'll actually just either impact them on, they'll forget to torque them down. Over torque and under torque are both terrible for your studs. You want to make sure they're torqued to spec, about 120, 140 foot-pounds, depending on the vehicle. You can Google it, you can check it on All Data. A couple different ways to check it, but definitely make sure your wheels are torqued. Wheel coming off, especially on the highway, sucks. So, hope you guys found that informative. I know I kind of glossed over a few things. We were talking about it. Main thing is fluids for me. Work your way from front to back. Coolant, power steering, brake fluid, your oil, of course. transmission, T-case, differentials if you have both, you know, if you got two. Go through, change all those fluids. It's cheap insurance. You don't know when the last time it was done. You know, it doesn't matter if the guy you bought it from said I just did it yesterday. Half the time it's not right. Half the time they're lying. It is what it is. So go through, check all your fluids. That's going to be your biggest thing. A couple other things, you want to just kind of get a hand on everything. Check for looseness, check for aftermarket components kind of rubbing together. We've seen where, you know, A company and B company this kind of just don't mesh. A lot of guys think just throw the most expensive things or even the cheapest things. Obviously, we've seen a lot of that. Add it and you have a good truck. It doesn't always work that way. So this is basically kind of giving you an idea of what to do to kind of minimize major problems down the road. Get under there, check everything out, get a hand on everything. The more time you spend now doing this, gives you less chance of a failure down the road. Again, I'm hammering home that most of your failures are gonna happen when you least expect them and when you least want them to happen, whether you ain't got the money for it or you're with the family again, with the toy hauler, going to Glamis or something, and that's when the big expense hits. That's when the big boom happens. Now you got a big tow bill, got a big repair bill. A lot of things can be prevented with just simple maintenance. So maintenance is key on these trucks. Any truck, any vehicle mainly, but especially diesels, maintenance is key. So kind of glossed over a few things. I also want to mention those dual stabilizers that kind of go both ways. I've seen where one fails and it kind of pushes you one way or the other. I don't really like those. I get rid of those if they're on my vehicle. They're kind of gimmicky to me. Kind of a band-aid to a poor suspension setup, but if you got to have it, make sure both of them are working, because if one's working, if you can think about it, obviously it's going to push. They got to kind of counteract each other. Hope you like that. Hope you found it informative, and look forward to a bunch more videos, especially with old White Lightning here. So if you liked it, like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you next week.